What started as a fringe rumor whispered in the back alleys of Reddit and Telegram has now burst into the mainstream, with millions of people asking the same uncomfortable question. Did Meghan Markle and Prince Harry secretly use a surrogate for both of their children and lie about it to the world? This isn't some idle gossip or petty tabloid chatter anymore. It's a crisis that's galloping toward Buckingham Palace like a runaway carriage, carrying with it a pile of documents, NDAs, and sworn claims from a woman who says she was the real mother behind the Sussex births. A woman who insists she was hidden, paid off, and ultimately erased. And the most shocking part? She says she has the receipts to prove every last word. Today, we're going to break down exactly how this scandal erupted, why it's causing panic behind royal gates and Netflix boardrooms alike, and what might happen if her story turns out to be true. So buckle up, because once you hear all the details, you'll understand why this saga isn't just about Meghan and Harry anymore. It's about legitimacy, power, and the public's right to know when they've been sold a fairy tale that might not have been real. Let's start at the heart of the chaos, the woman called DL. She's not some anonymous troll hiding behind a screen name. She stepped into the light, calmly announcing that she, not Meghan, was the woman who carried Archie and Lilibet. Her story reads like a script from a prestige drama. According to DL, she was recruited by a high-end surrogacy agency in California in late 2018, just months after Harry and Meghan's wedding. She claims she was flown to a secluded residence, placed under strict medical supervision, and given an ironclad NDA that forbade her from speaking to anyone about her pregnancy. If her claims ended there, it would already be a headline. But DL didn't stop. She says she has everything. Hospital records from Cedars-Sinai, payment logs showing six-figure transfers, even emails from Meghan's team referring to her as the carrier. And she's not whispering this in dark corners. She's daring Meghan and Harry to sue her. She's challenging them to disprove her in court. When she finally went public, the story detonated across the internet. And suddenly, all those old conspiracy theories people had laughed off started to look a little different. Remember the early days of Meghan's first pregnancy? The royal watchers with too much time on their hands and YouTube channels with names like the Moon Bump Files posted endless compilations of Meghan's belly looking suspiciously foldable, clips of her standing up and the shape shifting under her dress, shots where the size of her bump appeared dramatically different from one public event to another, sometimes within the same week. Back then, mainstream outlets mocked these videos as cruel nonsense. But as DL's story gained traction, even some seasoned royal commentators admitted that the optics never made much sense. Take the birth timeline itself. Archie was reportedly born on May 6, 2019. But within 2 hours, Meghan was supposedly home at Frogmore Cottage, smiling and recuperating as if she'd just returned from brunch. No matter how you spin it, that's a lightning-fast discharge for any woman giving birth, let alone a first-time mother in her late 30s. Kate Middleton, by comparison, appeared on the hospital steps just hours after delivery, still in her gown, presenting her babies to the world like every royal mother before her. But with Meghan, no hospital steps, no candid photos, just Harry standing alone in front of a horse stable, grinning awkwardly and announcing, "We had a baby." The time it felt peculiar. In hindsight, it feels like the opening act of a carefully managed production. But here's where things get darker. DL alleges that after Lilibet's birth, she expected at least some acknowledgement, even if her name remained confidential. She says she was promised postpartum care and mental health follow-ups. Instead, she claims she was ghosted. Communication stopped overnight. She became, in her words, a vessel, useful until the moment she delivered, and disposable the second she wasn't needed. When she tried to reach out, she got no response. When she pushed harder, she received terse letters from Meghan's legal representatives, reminding her of the NDA and threatening action if she spoke out. That, she says, was the final straw. They were going to treat her as if she never existed. She would make sure the entire world knew she did. And just like that, the question of Archie and Lilibet's parentage transformed from a cruel whisper campaign to a public reckoning. 'Cause DL wasn't just speculating. She claimed she had documents that could shatter the Sussex story for good. But let's zoom out and consider why this is so much more than a family drama. At its core, this is a constitutional crisis waiting to happen. Because royal succession isn't merely about public image. It's governed by laws that have stood for centuries. If DL's story is true, and that's still a big if, it means the children presented as biological heirs to the British throne were not born of Meghan's body, as tradition and legal precedent require. According to the 1917 letters patent issued by King George V, a royal heir must be lawfully begotten of the body to retain their place in the line of succession. That phrase sounds archaic, it's because it is, but it's also binding. No matter how modern the monarchy pretends to be, they are still shackled to centuries of rules about bloodlines and legitimacy. So if Meghan and Harry deliberately obscured the surrogacy, they might not just have broken public trust. They might have committed a fraud on the crown itself. And that's why, behind the scenes, the palace is reportedly in panic mode. Multiple outlets have reported that King Charles has convened private legal consultations to explore what happens if proof emerges that Meghan never gave birth. Would Archie and Lilibet be quietly removed from the line of succession? Would their titles be suspended or stripped? What precedent would it set for any future heirs born via undisclosed surrogacy? No one has clear answers because no one ever imagined this scenario. The monarchy has weathered affairs, abdications, and even the shock of Diana's televised confessions. But a hidden surrogate arrangement? That's uncharted territory. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the fallout isn't confined to Buckingham Palace. It's engulfing the Sussex brand too. Because if there's one thing Hollywood can't abide, it's a whiff of dishonesty that makes everyone else look complicit. Take Spotify. The Sussex's $20 million podcast deal was already on life support after they delivered only a single season of content. When it finally collapsed, a senior Spotify executive publicly called Harry and Meghan effing grifters. At the time, it sounded petty. Now, in the context of DL's claims, it sounds prophetic. Netflix, the couple's other golden goose, is also reportedly taking a hard look at their deal. The streamer has poured tens of millions into Sussex documentaries and specials. But if any of those projects contain false narratives about their children's births, Netflix could find itself exposed to liability. After all, it's one thing to spin your life story for public sympathy. It's another to package untruths as fact in exchange for 8-figure checks. Even Oprah Winfrey, who handed Meghan and Harry the biggest platform of their post-royal careers, has gone conspicuously silent. The same woman who sat across from Meghan as she wept over palace racism and suicidal thoughts, has not issued a single statement about DL's allegations. No comment, no Instagram post, nothing. And that silence speaks volumes. Because if DL's evidence checks out, it means Oprah may have unwittingly lent her credibility to a story that omitted a colossal truth. And for a woman whose brand is built on authenticity, that's not a risk she's likely to tolerate. But perhaps the most remarkable part of this entire saga is how Meghan and Harry have responded. Or rather, how they haven't. In the past, Meghan was quick to dispatch lawyers, issue statements, and grant interviews to set the record straight. But this time, nothing. No press conference, no denial, no attempt to discredit DL directly. Some insiders claim this is strategic, a calculated silence designed to starve the story of oxygen. But others suspect it's because the Sussex camp knows DL isn't bluffing, that she does, in fact, have the documents she says she does, and that a courtroom showdown could drag every last secret into the light. Meanwhile, DL is just getting started. She's already announced her intention to sit for a primetime interview with an American network. In that broadcast, she says she'll show portions of the hospital logs and emails she's kept hidden for almost 6 years. She's also publicly demanded that Meghan and Harry submit to an independent DNA test. No royal doctors, no PR intermediaries, just a simple swab to prove who the children's biological mother really is. That challenge has electrified the story, because if the Sussexes refuse, people will inevitably wonder why. After all, if you're innocent, wouldn't you want to prove it as quickly and definitively as possible? And this is where the public perception starts to crystallize. The longer Meghan and Harry remain silent, the more people begin to suspect there's something to hide. Even those who once defended them are rethinking their allegiance. Former fans have scrubbed supportive tweets. Influencers who built their brands around the Sussex narrative have quietly stopped mentioning them. The British public, never exactly warm to Meghan, has turned outright hostile. Approval ratings have plummeted to historic lows, and even in the United States, their reputation has soured. What was once a story about two brave royals breaking away from the crown has mutated into a parable about trust and the perils of carefully curated branding. And looming over all of it are two innocent children, Archie and Lilibet, who never asked to be at the center of this hurricane. Whatever the truth, they will grow up reading these headlines, seeing the speculation, and wondering why their births became a global controversy. So what happens now? Will DL's interview finally deliver the smoking gun? Will Meghan and Harry emerge from their Montecito fortress to confront the allegations head-on? Will Buckingham Palace step in to impose consequences? Or will this saga become one of those unresolved royal scandals that historians pick apart for decades, always just out of reach of definitive proof? One thing is certain, the curtain has been pulled back, and whatever emerges from the shadows next could redefine not only Meghan and Harry's legacy but the very notion of modern monarchy itself. So stay tuned, because this story isn't over. It's only just beginning. But before we go any further, let's take a moment to ask why this story, out of all the controversies swirling around Meghan and Harry, has struck such a nerve. Why have millions of people latched onto DL's allegations when so far she hasn't even released a single scanned document to the press? The answer in part is timing. For years, the Sussexes built their public image around the idea that they were victims of an outdated, cruel institution. From Oprah to Netflix to countless magazine profiles, they presented themselves as the truth tellers, modern, vulnerable, unafraid to expose the monarchy's flaws. And for a while that narrative worked. People wanted to believe them. They wanted to see Meghan as a brave outsider who had the guts to challenge a palace stuck in the 19th century. But the problem with positioning yourself as the ultimate voice of authenticity is that any hint of hypocrisy becomes lethal. Because if the couple who spent years condemning royal secrecy were actually hiding their own monumental secret, it's not just a PR misstep. It's a collapse of everything they've claimed to stand for. And so DL's story isn't just about a surrogate. It's about betrayal, about the possibility that Harry and Meghan built their empire on the very deception they accused others of. And that sting is what's making even their former allies go quiet. Inside the Sussex household, the pressure has reportedly become unbearable. Multiple staffers have spoken anonymously to journalists, describing an atmosphere of dread. According to one longtime aide, no one raises their voice anymore. Every word is measured. Every glance is scrutinized. Employees who were once fiercely loyal have either left or started looking for new jobs. One particularly striking detail emerged from an anonymous source in Montecito who claims to have seen Harry pacing the property alone at 3 in the morning, muttering to himself and stopping occasionally to stare out at the Pacific. Whether that's true or just another bit of rumor, it perfectly captures the image of a man watching the life he built start to slip away. Meanwhile, Meghan has reportedly retreated almost entirely behind closed doors. Once the most visible face of their joint brand, always ready with a podcast monologue or a glossy Vogue interview, she has gone dark. No statements, no interviews, no denials, just a deafening strategic silence. And that in itself is fueling speculation. Because even the most carefully worded legal letter would be better in the eyes of many than nothing at all. If there's no truth to DL's claims, why not crush them with a single signed statement or a photograph that proves Meghan was in the delivery room? Instead, DL is the one controlling the narrative. She's the one sitting for interviews. She's the one promising evidence. And the Sussexes are the ones barricaded behind lawyers and PR consultants, hoping perhaps that the story will burn itself out. But here's the problem with that strategy. The story isn't burning out. If anything, it's accelerating. Major European outlets, who don't have to fear the same libel laws as British media, are reportedly preparing investigative pieces that will dive into every aspect of the births. From hospital staffing logs to aviation records showing private jet flights near the time of delivery, journalists are combing through data with a single goal: to prove whether DL's story holds water. And let's be clear, this isn't just idle curiosity, because if a single credible outlet confirms even part of DL's claims, the consequences could be catastrophic. Not just for Harry and Meghan's reputations, but for their finances. Think about the contracts they've signed, the Netflix documentaries, the podcast deals, the memoirs. So much of that content was sold to the public as unfiltered truth. If it turns out they omitted or misrepresented something this foundational, the legal fallout could dwarf any previous scandal. Even Netflix is reportedly reviewing their existing Sussex content for potential inaccuracies. One executive, speaking anonymously, described it this way: "If you buy a non-fiction story from someone and it turns out they lied about the single most important detail, that's not just embarrassing, it's actionable." And Netflix is not alone. Publishers are nervously paging through Harry's memoir, Spare, wondering if any passages about fatherhood or Meghan's pregnancies could come back to haunt them. Publicists are privately worrying about brand deals that now look toxic. One insider summed it up in a single sentence: "No one wants to be the last person holding the Sussex bag." But the stakes go even deeper than money. They touch on something older and more fragile: the credibility of the monarchy itself. Because while Harry and Meghan have tried to portray themselves as separate from royal life, the truth is their fame and influence still depend on their royal connection. Remove that connection or undermine the legitimacy of their children's place in the line of succession, and what are they left with? A brand built on a foundation of sand. And that's why Buckingham Palace, despite its studied silence, is said to be in quiet crisis talks. If even part of DL's story proves true, the palace will have to decide whether to take action. Do they remove Archie and Lilibet's titles? Suspend their place in the succession? Issue a statement clarifying the situation? No matter which path they choose, it will be unprecedented. The monarchy has never dealt with a surrogate scandal this serious, and the old guard is reportedly furious that Harry and Meghan's decisions have now created a constitutional question with no obvious solution. Meanwhile, public sentiment has turned sharply. A recent YouGov poll showed trust in Harry and Meghan at an all-time low, with nearly 70% of respondents saying they no longer believe the couple are honest about their personal lives. In the US, support has slipped below 40%, a staggering fall from grace for a pair once hailed as the fresh face of the royal family. Even Meghan's famous friends are quietly backing away. Oprah hasn't said a word. Serena Williams, who once gushed about Meghan's resilience, has gone radio silent. Ellen DeGeneres, who called Meghan the realest person I know, hasn't posted anything supportive in months. The exodus of allies has left the Sussexes more isolated than ever. And that isolation is only deepening as DL prepares to take the biggest step yet: her televised interview. According to multiple sources, the network airing her sit-down is already preparing contingency plans in case Meghan's lawyers attempt to block the broadcast. But insiders say the interview will air, even if only in clips online, and DL is determined to show proof of her claims. If she does, and if her documentation holds up, the consequences will be immediate. Public opinion could swing fully in her favor. Royal commentators will have no choice but to call for clarity, and the Sussex brand, already battered, could collapse entirely. And yet, for all the speculation and outrage, there's still one inescapable truth. We don't know what really happened. We don't know whether DL is telling the whole truth, part of the truth, or none of it. We don't know if Meghan was the victim of a cruel conspiracy or the architect of a carefully planned deception. But the fact that so many people are willing to believe the latter speaks to how brittle the Sussex narrative has become. When you cultivate an image of honesty and moral superiority, you leave yourself no room for error. And when cracks appear, even the smallest fracture can turn into an earthquake. And maybe that's the real lesson here, not just for Meghan and Harry, but for anyone who trades in personal storytelling as a brand. The public will tolerate almost anything, except the feeling that they've been lied to. As this story barrels toward its next chapter, there are only more questions. Will DL's evidence finally see the light of day? Will the Sussexes come forward with proof of their own? Will the palace step in to draw a line between rumor and fact? Or will this saga drift into the shadows, unresolved but never truly forgotten? One thing is certain: the world is watching. Every silence, every statement, every legal filing is being dissected by millions of eyes hungry for answers. And in that void where the truth should be, speculation will continue to grow. For now, all we can do is wait, and wonder whether the next revelation will be the one that finally breaks the spell.